Guys, I am super excited to introduce you to Jennifer Breisacher. Jennifer is the CEO of Student Centered World. Jennifer is out creating some amazingly positive ripples. I'm super excited to learn about her organization and what she is doing. She's a former educator, she was a teacher, and now she's focused on helping train teachers to put their goal and their focus on that number one mission, which is our students. And this is one of the most challenging jobs that you could possibly imagine, which is being an educator in the classroom right now with all the responsibilities, all the challenges, all the difficulties. How do you really stay committed and focused on delivering the best possible outcome for the kids? I think Jennifer's going to have some great ideas and she's going to be able to share some really unique thoughts. And whether you have a kid in school or not, this is an episode that I really want to ask you to pay attention to, because all of us that are looking to create positive ripples out there can do more to support our educators. It is an important role and responsibility that we have, because these teachers are asked to do so much with so little, and they are in such need of ripples. Our support, our admiration, obviously our commitment to our communities to support their school districts. I can't wait to get into all of this with Jennifer, but she is a true rippler. So I'm so excited to have Jennifer join us for the Ripple Effect podcast today. So let's dive right in. Guys, I'm super excited to have Jenn join us for the Ripple Effect podcast. First of all, Jenn, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm so excited to be here, and whatever I can ripple out there would be wonderful.
I love it. I love it. Well, so I'm always big about, kind of the origin story. So I know you started in the classroom, and then when you started Student-Centered Worlds, you left that as kind of and started that as a full-time venture for yourself. But give us a little bit of your background and history. What led you down the education path in the first place, and what inspires you about continuing this work today?
Yeah, I knew I always wanted to be in some type of a helping profession. So in my brain, that was either being a teacher or a nurse, and I don't do blood. So that made that decision really
Yeah,
easy,
that's
really
super simple.
fast.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, my husband's a nurse. So like we've got it all
Oh,
covered in my household anyway.
well, that's good. You
But
always got to go with the, positive and negative energy, right? So somebody's got to take, or the yin and the yang, I should say. So yeah, that works out
right.
good.
Every time my kids are hurt, I'm like, go see dad. Like just he's got it.
I don't
He's
want to
got it.
see it.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm with you.
I don't need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got into teaching. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember trying to help my friends learn, and I wanted to play school and all of those things. And, it was a natural path for me. So I started teaching officially in 2007. Very traditional type teacher. I taught high school history. So it was a lot of lecture, PowerPoint, let me feed you all of this information, and then you spit it back at me,
Yeah.
much like most of us remember our history classes being back in the day.
Yeah.
And then, like 2 or 3 years into working in that district, they did a push to do student centered learning. And the hard part was they were kind of trying to train us on what that looked like by trying to make us just do it.
Yeah.
In that we would say, well, okay, that sounds great. This data looks great. You can tell it's good, but how do you do it? And they would just say, well, just make it student centered. And we're like, well, that's great, but we don't understand what that means. So a lot of people just smile and nodded and went about their business. But when I would try stuff and it would work well, it would work really, really well. So I knew that was something that I had to try to figure out.
Can you give an example? Like, what was one thing that you tried that you're like, oh wow, this really resonates.
I don't want to say I was ahead of my time with this, but when I would go through a unit, it would be, the traditional PowerPoint lecture, da da da. And then I would have the kids do some type of a project to try to tie it all together.
Mm.
And when those projects, they had some student choice in there, they were allowed to make their own decisions. They went off like gangbusters and would do these amazing projects. And I would get such good results out of them that I never even would have considered. I wouldn't have even thought to say, hey, why don't you try it this way?
Yeah.
They were off and running and it went well. So I knew, especially since that was the time when social media was really starting to grow, smartphones were starting to come out, the kids' attention spans were changing. This was the direction that education was going in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took me a good 5 years of trial and a lot of error to figure out how this works. Because in my mind in the beginning, if I was just giving them a worksheet or giving them something and I wasn't telling them what to do, that meant it was student centered.
Yeah.
That just meant I was giving them busy work. So if any of those kids from those years are listening, I apologize because I was a really awful teacher.
Well, you were
But
just
in
doing
the
what they told you to do, which is why you're doing what you're doing today, because they
right,
obviously didn't tell you right.
right. And again, I looking back, I think they were trying to get us to understand the concept of them not feeding it to us, but they
Sure.
also weren't giving us any type of guidance. And there wasn't a lot on the internet even at that time of how to do it. Telling you to do it was out there, but not how to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is why when I, fast forward to 2018, I was like, I'm going to be the person to tell people how to do it. Like, that's just what we're going to do. But in that 5 year span, I ended up switching school districts. I had our second child. We were both commuting an hour in opposite directions.
Cool.
I was like, let me see if I could find something closer to home. So I found something 6 minutes from home, which was much nicer. And when they hired me and they knew that I understood student centered learning, they basically gave me full reign of whatever I want to try, whatever I want to figure out. I say sometimes I was so far out on that ledge, like I couldn't even see the school anymore.
Yeah.
But through all of that, I was able to find just systems that worked. It didn't matter if they were my inclusion kids, if they were my honors kids, it would work for all of them. So in 2018, that's when I decided I'm going to take this on the road. I'm going to do it. I put it online. I created a course. I created a blog, social media, the whole nine. In terms of business, I did everything backwards. So you're supposed to start with the small stuff and go big. And I
Yeah.
started with the course because I
Yeah.
was like, if I build it, they'll come.
Yep.
They didn't. So learning the business aspect of it took some time. But now I think I've got it kind of figured out.
Yeah. You definitely, and just paying attention to what you're doing, you definitely have some things figured out without question. So congratulations to you. What was it that motivated you to say, hey, I can create a bigger ripple by doing this outside of just my district?
My coworkers.
Really?
I would do, they would say, anybody want to present at the PD coming up in February? And I'd say, okay, I'll do something
And
that
PD is professional development, right? Yeah.
correct,
Just got to make
correct.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would come up with something that I was doing all the time. I figured everybody knew how to do this. It was so common knowledge, and I'd put it out there, and people's mind would be blown, and they'd say, "Oh my gosh!" And when I give a workshop, I always give teachers time to practice whatever it is that we're talking about, because that's my pet peeve when
Yeah.
you go through something and you think it sounds great and then you never have time to implement it. So I remember one specifically, the second school that I taught in was a CTE school. So lots of shops and, learning and hands-on stuff. And the veterinary people were there. And they're like, we found this dissection online. We had no idea this even existed. We never would have looked for this, but now we can use it in class and da da da. So just talking to people, they're like, do you want to be a principal? Do you want to go into administration? And I said, I have no interest in that
Yeah.
side of things. I see the headaches. That's not my cup of tea. And they were like, then you need to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you need to try to tell people how to do this because it makes their life so much easier. The kids are more engaged. All the marks that we're trying to hit are being hit. You need to go and do this. So I did.
That's awesome. Well, so, I think for my audience, one of the things that I really would love your perspective on is even if somebody's listening or watching this on YouTube and they don't have a child in school or, they're not even thinking about their local school district. Could you explain some of the challenges that these teachers are facing today? Because they're ginormous, right?
They are. I mean, there's a lot of factors that we cannot control happening in the classroom right now, which is why you are seeing a mass teacher exodus.
Yeah.
I say all the time, I can help you with your craft as much as I can, but there are certain factors that I can't help with. And those factors are why teachers are leaving for the most part. But when it's looking at the kids, we've got our older kids as of right now are still Gen Z. And then we have Generation Alpha as our younger kids. So we got two different generations in the classroom right now. They do overlap a lot with their tendencies, but they're growing up in a world where information is at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
trying to stand there and feed them content, they don't care because all they have to do is ask Siri or go on Google or YouTube or TikTok or wherever, and
Or
they can find the
ChatGPT
information
now.
like that. Right.
Yeah.
Just type it in and
Yeah.
that's a whole nother ball game, trying to
Oh
make it
yeah.
where
Yeah.
kids can't use that, or can use it, but in anyway.
Yeah. I'm with you. We can
Yeah,
do a
yeah,
whole nother episode just
that
on
could be
that,
a
right?
whole other thing. Absolutely. But trying to teach in ways that worked for millennials or, older generations just doesn't work anymore because they're not craving the content, they're craving what to do with it.
Yeah.
So if it's not relevant to them, or if it's not something that they can dive deeper or find an interest in, they're going to go back on their phone. They're going to
Yeah.
go back to something
Check
else
out.
that does have that interest to them. And I think a lot of teachers are struggling because there's so many external factors that's making our job harder, that they don't even have the time to consider what can I do to make my craft better for these kids. So
Yeah.
it's a big mess.
Well, it's kind of funny because I had an opportunity to speak to a teacher that has become a principal recently, and she was talking about how in through the formal education process, which she struggled in school, but she always was enamored with the control that her teachers had and how they inspired her to want to be one. But when you go through like the formal training and education process, whether you're getting your undergraduate or an advanced degree in education, there's very little attention that's paid to what it takes to be effective when you're in the classroom. And
Yep.
I was speaking to a corporate audience last week, as a matter of fact, and I was talking about the technical and the tactical aspects. We all get really good at that wherever our profession or career might lead us, but really at the end of the day, how to get along with another human being or be responsible for all these human beings that are in the classroom, we're really dropping these teachers in and they're having to figure it out. And the problem, I think, as she sort of shared, is that you have this, like you said, cross generational of students, but you also have cross generational of teachers that are in those campuses that they're being hired to. And some just aren't adapting and knowing how it is. And it's like, well, the kids are just, today's kids are the problem or today's parents are the problem. And it's like, well, it's much bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
It's how you figure out how to engage. And there's not enough training and resources, which the work that you're doing really is inspiring that. So, hats off to you for that. I can't wait to share this episode with that principal for sure. But, do you see that as a bigger and bigger problem? And what does it take for us to, as outsiders that really do have a vested interest in our future workforce, how do we get involved? How do we help contribute, add value there?
There are so many layers to that question.
Yeah, no, I sorry, I went off on like a total like 15 different questions right there.
Yeah, no,
Sorry
it's
about
all,
that.
I
Yeah,
mean, looking at the teacher training through colleges and alternate route and stuff, a lot of the courses that they're giving today are the same ones that I took back when I was in college. And the kids are different and how you teach them are different. So
yep,
there needs to be more of a focus, in my opinion, on classroom management. What do you do with that kid who is a problem? What do you do with that parent who won't stop calling? These are aspects that it used to be an issue, but it was an issue that you could learn on the fly because it was far and few between,
yeah,
or there was somebody else that had dealt with it. Now there's so much on the plate and there's more of that happening, that not having any type of training, or maybe having one class that
yeah,
kind of went over it, with a professor that might be just doing straight lecturing and not doing simulations. And that would be a great place to have a simulation if you're a professor listening in,
yeah,
having the difficult conversations. And what do you do? As community members or parents, I mean, teachers are there because they love what they do. Anybody who is in the classroom wants to make a difference. The concept of, oh, some people only get into this because they want the summers off, that doesn't happen
yeah.
anymore.
There is no time off for a teacher, right?
No, I mean, again, that's a whole nother conversation we can get into.
Another episode we could do.
Another episode. I'm
I'll
coming
just make
back
a
a lot.
list of all the different ones we could.
But I mean, honestly, not only are the idea of summer vacation, that's like a myth anymore, but um, the people who do go into education and they go through their classes and then they start getting into their practicums and their internships and their student teaching, if they're in it for the summers, they drop out real quick because
Yeah,
they realize that it's not, I'm trying to word this delicately, it's not worth the time and energy if you're just hoping for a month and a half off. I mean, teachers are working before school, after school, on the weekends. That time even though you might have a block of time that you're just trying to regenerate and recoup over the summer, that time off has been spent throughout the
Yeah.
school year,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, I was talking to another superintendent, and he was saying that teachers are working 60 and 70 hours just to keep up. Like here in Texas, right? There's the big challenge of the standardized testing, and that has taken away a lot of sort of the new approach thinking to classroom management, because really at the end of the day the teachers get frustrated because they feel like they're teaching to the test, not teaching to the student. And so
Right.
how does the work that you do with your organization sort of help get around that or help support that in some capacity?
So that is an extremely difficult mental roadblock for people to understand when I try
Yeah.
to explain this to them. If you're doing the hands-on approach, if you're making the information make sense, if you're doing things that makes it just click for the kids, their test scores are going to be better because they understand it. They're not just trying to regurgitate it or remember what they talked about on that
Yeah.
Tuesday in
Yeah.
February or whatever it was. So, I mean, perfect example. I worked with a teacher once when I was still in the classroom, actually, and he was saying that he was trying to teach percentages. These kids just could not grasp it. He was getting really frustrated that something it was a big part of the test and blah 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 blah. So we created this whole simulation where the kids walked into school and it was a used car lot, and they all had a budget and they had to figure out, like, can you afford this car?
Yeah.
Can you afford what the payments are going to be? And they all had a different scenario and this and that. And they all walked in and wanted the Lamborghini, but some of them had to buy like the one that's missing a wheel, just depending on what they had going on. And after that, he came to me. He's like, they get it now. I said, right, because you made it relevant. You made it fun. I hate to say that because it's not a dog and pony show up there, but you made it where they got hooked. They got intrigued. They had to put real world scenarios to it. And now they understand it. And when that test comes up, they're going to remember what happened and they're going to do better than if they were just trying to legitimately remember numbers.
Yeah, without question. I think when I think back to what motivated me to want to be an entrepreneur is I had a teacher that taught a marketing education class that got me involved in DECA, but everything was around experience. Everything
Mm-hmm.
was how this is going to apply down the road. And I know when you're, especially in high school, 14, 15, 16, on up, at the end of the day, everybody, kids have this tendency to look at every educational opportunity as like, yeah, yeah, whatever you say. But at the end of
Right.
the day, my teacher, who is still a good friend of mine today, is really, he was instrumental in saying, look, no, I can tell you this, or I can show you this, and
Mm-hmm.
then we can walk through how this affects you. But when you put that student into the experience and they get an opportunity to really engage it, like you said, how do I budget my money to get the car that I can afford versus what I really want? And then have that conversation to say, well, okay, this is the car you have, but this car you want one day. So what's it going to take for you to get there? That opens up a whole different dynamic other than, just, simple economics. It's an opportunity for them to understand I've got a budget. I've got to, build towards what my, vision is and what my goal is. And he was really exceptional at doing that, really bringing that to life. And I think as I think back to all the teachers that really made the impact, it wasn't just sitting in front of the overhead projector and saying, okay, these are the things that are going to be on the test. This is, hey, imagine being in Mesopotamia. You are dropped into that time period, and this is what we're seeing, and this is what we're experiencing, what the smells are and what the challenges of survival. And it was a huge difference for me in terms of how I learned and processed information. But I even remember just what I would consider really the really good technical book smart kids just completely, it flipped the script for them because it was
Mm-hmm.
so memorable in such a way that blows me away that we just that more of that hasn't adapted over the years. And then when I think about the challenges that teachers have to face today, when, like you said, we're like competing against scroll technology, right? Or
Right.
the instant answer at the just by typing it into the phone. How to keep them engaged has got to be just even 10 times harder than it was even 10 years ago.
Absolutely. But when you start doing this type of stuff in the classroom, when it starts becoming the norm, when the kids start expecting it, you can still do some traditional stuff because they know something else is coming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like perfect example for me, and I talk about this experience all the time because it changed me too as the teacher, not just for the kids. We did the World War II unit in US to or world history, excuse me. With my world history class, we did the whole, I had all the different activities and stuff. But at the end, I had linked up with a teacher in Germany who was also teaching World War II, and we did a pen
Oh.
pal exchange
Oh, that's
of
cool.
what was going on with our families and what was going on with their families. So I was blown away because, we think World War II, Nazi Germany, all of those atrocities, but their families were more on the front where Russia was coming in. So all of their stories were Russia coming in and bombarding and blah, blah, blah. Like the word Nazi, the word Hitler was in one, maybe two letters, whereas in the United States, we're like, but that's the whole
That's all
thing,
we
right?
know. Yeah. Yeah.
On the flip side, a lot of our kids were writing about Pearl Harbor, excuse me, and like the effects that had. And they were like, who cares? Like that was just
Yeah.
one thing. Like what difference? So, I mean, their teacher learned a lot. We learned a lot. A lot of the kids then connected on social media. I talk to some of them still, and they still chat with these friends that they met. And, they had the cobblestone streets and they're running up with their Snapchat. They're like, look at what they showed me. Look, and it made such a difference. And it took an extra day of
Yeah.
my curriculum to just like, we're going to write this letter and send it off. And they were like, okay, sure. And then they got the ones back, and it made all the difference in the world. So it's just once you get things rolling, they get hooked and they know she's got something up her sleeve, something's coming. So even if it's not like every day, coming up with these scenarios, you're dropped in Mesopotamia, even if it's like, okay, we got to go through this worksheet today. We have to make sure we get through this in the book, these questions, they know something else is coming. So they're going to do it because they want to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and you can see it in your eyes. I mean, you just light up when you talk about that, which I know has to make you super effective at what you do today, inspiring teachers. It's like, I think I read or heard you say, because I did a fair amount of research. I even went and watched the YouTube video of your interview from your high school. Like, where are they now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother episode as
Right.
well, right? But at the end of the day, the thing that I really that really struck me was just how truly passionate you are about it and helping inspire people to realize that it doesn't take this ginormous shift. It's just small things added up make a big difference.
Absolutely. That's 100% accurate. And it's funny because, teachers, a lot of people say it's very cliche. Oh, I always said it. It's the aha moment that gets you
Hmm.
when you see the light turn on, when it understands, well, now I do it for teachers and I
Yeah.
see their aha moment. And then I know it transfers into their classrooms and their students see the aha moment. So my aha moment now has just astronomically exploded because it's not just the walls of my classroom.
I would think, through the programs that you offer, a lot of what you're doing is actually helping anchor those teachers back to what got them into education in the first place, right?
A lot of them. Yep.
So do you have like
Absolutely.
maybe a story or two that you can maybe share about, one of those moments or one of those teachers that you've impacted that you're like, maybe they were maybe even, a little bit burned out or even contemplating leaving the profession. And then it was like, ooh, this idea really spurned something on. Cause I can tell by your website, you get a lot of great feedback and a lot of great responses after people go through your program.
So I don't want to say just about everybody I have talked to
You
has said
can,
that.
you
It's
can
like,
brag if you want to.
right.
That's
I
perfectly
mean,
fine. It's like, yeah,
but just, their stress level goes down and they have time and you get to actually interact with the kids without feeling like it's just something else to check off the list. But the number one story that I kind of always go back to was, I think it was summer of 2020. So everybody's kind of trying to figure
oh
out
yeah.
what's going on here. And I had a teacher that was doing one of my free programs from over the summer, and she was going into third grade for the first year. So she had been teaching before, but this was her first year in third grade. And she said, listen, this all sounds great. And I can understand why it works for high school students and the older kids and kids who are engaged
Oh,
in their learning and stuff. But I don't understand how this is going to work for little kids. And I was like, trust the process. All you have to do is take all of this and take your content and put it into it. I make sure that all of my programs are like that. So a lot of times when I say, oh, it's K-12, people think I'm full of it because they're like, you can't teach a kindergartner the same way you teach a high school kid. Maybe not, but you can ebb it and flow it and arrange it for, what's age appropriate and whatever. So she tried it. Not only did it work amazing, she now trains on it. She's one of the lead trainers in her school for it. So it's like she came back, she was like, you were right, it works. I said, I know.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Hmm.
fantastic. So, do you find that a lot? You have those, I mean, you mentioned the aha moments, but at the end of the day, do you end up coming back to a lot or having a lot of those teachers come back to the experience and go, "Well, oh my gosh, I tried it. It worked. Now I'm ready to do more. I'm ready to figure out how to, up level my, the experience for my next set of students."
Yeah, I mean, because the way I explain it to them is, I lay it all out, but I say just start small. You don't have to do everything at first because it's not going to work. You got to
Yeah.
train yourself, you got to train the kids and kind of grow upon it. And that seems to work. And every once in a while, it doesn't work for somebody, just the dynamic of the kids or whatever. But then we'll talk about it. Well, if this didn't work for you, but hey, so and so has a similar dynamic and they tried this, why don't you give that a shot? So I try to be very interactive. If people ask me questions, they have concerns, I don't think this is going to work. And, we work through it together, and I always try to help them find a way to make it happen.
So, is your entry point into the schools that you work with always through the professional development, point of contact with that district, or are teachers seeking you out? How do people find out about the work that you're doing and then get engaged in the programs?
Usually it's through individual teachers.
Okay.
So they find my website, or they find one of the free workshops I'm doing, or I, have a program that I usually run every summer to prep for the first day of school. So they usually come at me individually, but then if they're like, this is great, they call their friends. They're like, we need to get on this. Next thing I know, the district's reaching out. Do you take PO orders? All of that. And
That's a
I
good problem to
do.
have.
I
Yeah.
very much do.
Yeah. Yeah. All day, every day.
Right, right. But I do find it is hard to get in at that district level first, because if you're not part of a big organization, or they've already spent their PD budget for, they did it last year
Yeah.
before this year, and so it's a very hard balance of timing, I find. But when the teachers are going into their supervisor saying, hey, listen, we gotta do this, that's what makes it happen.
Well, I may have to pick your brain at some point. I think I mentioned before we started recording that we're launching a program called the School Leadership Ripple, and the goal behind that is really to create. One of the things that I found, I actually own a software company that actually has worked with school districts to help them build their new schools, their infrastructure, and one of the challenges that we experience, which kind of kicked off this idea, is you don't know what you don't know, right? And you don't know
Right.
the questions that you need to be asking. And one of the things that sort of became painfully obvious to me was not only just in construction and facility management of a school district, but there's all these other elements, whether it's leadership, whether that's health and wellness, mental well-being of your teachers, your administrators, creating a culture. And the concept that I have with the ripple is every action we take, every decision we make, every conversation that we have has the potential to have a positive or a negative ripple effect, and it's controlled by that person, right? And
Right.
if you're not thinking about it, or you're not looking at your actions, how you communicate, how you interact with, whether it be students, whether it be your staff, your coworkers, you're likely not even aware of the carnage that you may be creating, positive or negative, right? But at
Right.
the end of the day, the ripples and ripples ripple out, but they always ripple back, right? So
Hmm.
trying to create this concept where we can create an environment where leadership and their teams, their school communities can start to have more open conversations about a variety of topics, whether it's public speaking, or whether it be what we do for future planning, or how do we retain the teachers. And what I find is that there's just this somewhat resistance, because at the end of the day, the leadership team is supposed to be the ones that come with all the answers, and they're the ones that are so desperate and trying to figure it out, but they don't want
Right.
to admit it. So how do you unify that where everybody can get on the same side of the desk and be able to have these dialogues without judgment, without fear of retribution, but to be able to have these open dialogues? Because much like what you experienced, you took something that you got exposure to, and you're like, this could be so much better and it could be so much bigger. But it takes having that entrepreneurial spirit almost in house to be able to say, look, we can do more with this. And part of that comes down to just like what you and I are doing. How do you have that human interaction, those heart to heart, belly to belly conversations to really make a difference? So I'm really really enamored with what you're doing and the ripples that you're creating with your work, because it's so important and so critical, and it's such an important job that they all hold, right? Whether it be the teachers, the assistant principals, the principals, all the way up to administration, but trying to figure out how to break down some of those barriers of communication and interaction and say, hey, we don't have to be the ones that invented it here. We just have to be the ones that apply it and the ones
Right.
that make it work.
And I really feel instead of that being a trickle down conversation, it needs to be a ground up conversation.
I love
Not
that.
just because that's how like people find me,
Yeah.
but when it never fails that an administration team will find something, they know it's going to be great, they think it's going to be fantastic for the culture, for everything, and they come to their teachers and they say, we're doing this and we're doing it now. And the teachers, it's a real hard buy-in when they're just trying to stay afloat to be like, oh, now we have to do this other
Another
brand
thing.
new
Yeah.
thing. It's just another thing that's going to go away. It's going to change. We're going to do it this year. Next year, it's going to be something different. Like when you invest in this type of concept, it needs to be, I mean, it will stand the test of time, but
Yeah.
it has to. It can't just be, well, we're going to be hard on it for the first month and then like we're going to wean off. And then when you get observed, we'll see if you're still kind of doing it. And then you try to find out when they're coming down the hallway so you can quick put something together. So it's like you're doing it, even if you're not actually doing. Like we know how it goes. So
Yeah.
it's like it's really important, instead of it being a mandate, to find a way for everybody to have that conversation, to see the data, to see why it works, and to get them all to buy in
Yeah.
before even starting to train on it. Because there's no set. It's like trying to teach a kid who doesn't want to learn.
Yeah.
Except for adults are usually louder and more defiant about it.
And you can't send them to detention. I've figured
Right,
that out. Yeah.
right.
Or they don't
And
stay. You just can't do
right.
it.
So, I mean, it's a good thing. I've seen it work in every element of education, every socioeconomic group, every dynamic that there is, special education, advanced placement, little kids, older kids. But if you don't have the buy-in from the teachers starting,
Yeah.
let alone them having enough excitement about it to get the kids to buy in, or trying to go at it all so fast saying, hey, we're going to do all of these things, start it tomorrow, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Let me shift gears for just a second because, this is truly what you are today. What's it feel like to be an entrepreneur?
It's the best, worst thing ever. I say, now let me actually explain why I say that. I love it. I get to get my kids on and off the bus every day. I'm on the PTO. I make dinner every night without stressing out about it. Or, if my husband hears this, he'll be like, I make dinner sometimes too. But, just throwing that out. It's the concept. It's the
Yeah.
concept. But leaving the classroom and starting this right away, I still had the teacher scarcity of time mindset of I have to grind, I have to grind, I have to grind to get this done. And I still struggle with that. So as much as I preach to everyone, you need to have a work-life balance, you need to make sure that you're taking time for yourself. I'm the worst offender of, I think I've been working on something now for the past 9 days straight. My neighbor came over the other week and he's like, why are you working on Saturday? I'm like, because I want to get this done.
Yeah.
It's hard, especially, I mean, I think a lot of people who work from home have this problem of all of a sudden it's way later than you would have left work and you're
Sure.
still trying to finish something up. So it's amazing in so many ways, and everything else that's not is a me problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you have an interesting take. You fall into the trap that every entrepreneur does, including myself, which is when you get passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't seem like work, but the problem is that at some point you end up, hitting a brick wall, and that can always be a challenge. But having done what you're doing, and what's the future hold for what you're creating? Like when you look at your business, student centered world, is this something that you're going to add or build to your team and add on to, or what's the long-term vision for it?
So my long-term vision is be able to train every single teacher in the world on how to do this because it's the most effective
Small
thing ever.
goals, small goal.
Small, yeah, that's a
You need to
little
aim
lofty,
higher. I mean, come on.
right? But honestly, I'm just trying to ebb and flow with where education is right now. It is a hard sell to teachers, especially if it's an individual and not a district wide.
Yeah.
Of they don't even know if they want to do this anymore, let alone invest in it. So like that's a weird challenge that I was not expecting, because who knew that things were going to get kind of dicey like they are
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. But I mean, I do have other stuff. Like every year I look back and I realize the things that I've grown, new workshops. I have a book coming out. I do have another program that I'm trying to teach people how to start their own website, whether that's for use in the classroom or like their own little entrepreneurial journey, just as kind of something else to help people out there.
Sure.
But who knows where it's going to go? I hope it keeps growing. Every time I get discouraged or upset or I'm not where I want to be or whatever, I just look at my stats from the time since 2018, and it's been on an upward climb the whole time. So
Yeah.
something's still going right.
Well, I tell you, if you ever lack the motivation or you feel like you're down, you can call me anytime because I'll be happy to give you the kick in the pants you need because you're creating such positive ripples. You mentioned your book. What's the title of the book? When do you anticipate it to come out, or do you know yet?
So it's called the Classroom Dichotomy.
Cool.
It's going to be coming out hopefully, I want to say like the next month or two.
Okay.
I'm going to be presenting at FETC, and we're hoping to have it out by then. So we'll see. It is an
where
edit.
you're presenting with Laura? Laura
That is where we are
Okay.
tag teaming, yes. And as a
Yeah.
sneak peek, we're going to teach people how to juggle.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yes.
Like legit
So
juggle?
I'm going to, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so I'm going to leave that little bit of mystery there, but we're really excited about that.
I just didn't know if juggle was like some sort of code word for the education, community out there. That
I mean, there's a metaphor involved
Sure.
as well, but I have a whole bag of, ball pit balls downstairs already packed, ready to go.
Awesome.
So
it's all about the experience, right? I mean, that makes it
that.
memorable. I love it. So you practice what you preach for sure. That's fantastic.
Exactly. That's how I run my workshops. If I'm not making it hands-on.
So before I go, one of the things that we always do with these interviews is I always like to ask some ripple connection questions. And these are questions that are kind of fun to ask, but give us some additional insight as to who you are.
Okay.
Game?
Sure.
Cool. Okay. So, Jen, what did 7-year-old Jen want to be?
A teacher. I kid you not. It's like always been there. I think I went through a small blip of time where I wanted to be like a writer or something artsy like that. But
and look,
it's
now
just
you
always
are. I mean,
right now I do all the things. Right. 7-year-old me would be so proud.
What was your proudest accomplishment before the age of 16?
Ooh, wow. So I was a competitive cheerleader before they taught you how to like lift people properly. So my back is eternally messed up. But we created a little all-star team before all-star teams were a thing. And we competed against something like 36 other teams. It was like before these things were huge, like we went and did it. And I think we came in like 9th or something. And we had literally just been like practicing in backyards and stuff. So, I mean, that was so huge because it's like, we did the thing, we made the thing. I guess I have a tendency of doing things before it's popular.
Yeah. I'm seeing a preview of coming attractions, right?
Right.
Where do you find your motivation?
My family. When we moved to North Carolina, so I started the business in New Jersey, worked for a year, and then we moved to North Carolina. I promised my oldest son that I would not work when they were home from school. Now, granted, COVID happened, so we were all working when we were home from school. But I've tried to keep that going, and they get home and they want to know, like, what did you do today? Did you talk to anybody? They get excited about that. But also, like, by far, my husband is my biggest supporter in the world. He's my biggest cheerleader. No matter what idea I come up with, he's like, let's run with it. Let's go with it.
That's awesome.
About a year or two ago, he was like, I think I need a title in your business. And I was like, what would you like to be, dear? He's like, senior vice president. I'm like, okay. So now he's my senior vice president, which means he helps me when I ask him. But like being able to be present. We've been able to travel, and I'm still able to work when we're traveling and stuff. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. And what's your husband's name?
Sean.
Sean. All right.
Yes.
Well, good on Sean. Senior Vice President Sean.
That's correct. He does a lot.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So your motivation is your family. When people think about the work that you do today, what would be the best possible description you could hear somebody else say about what you do?
I helped change their classroom for them. It went from I mean, we see it a lot right now, just stressed, drowning, like can't get the kids to do anything. There's no motivation, all of the cliche things. And they go in, they do the little things, they make the changes, they hook their students, they are focusing on student intent and changing their lessons just ever so slightly. And now they're going to work, they're enjoying going to work again. The kids are doing the work, they're actually learning. Other colleagues are walking by, peeking their head in, saying, "What in the world are you doing? Do I hear Led Zeppelin playing?" That happened in my classroom once. Like all those little things that's just, it works. And that is the ultimate, you know, aha, rah rah thing for me to hear from somebody.
I love it. I love it. That who would you consider? I know in this interview, and I may have to post a link to it now that I've mentioned it twice. But your, where are they now? One from your former high school. But I know you had two specific teachers that were big influences on you. You want to give us a little bit of a background there?
So that was a really long time ago interview. So I'm hoping I'm saying the two teachers that are popping up in my
Okay, we
mind right
won't be
now.
posting that link. Never mind.
I am guessing, I know for sure one was Mr. O'Brien, who was one of my English teachers. I ended up having him like 2 or 3 times. He taught kind of like I ended up teaching, just very like laid back and funny and sarcastic, and made you feel like you mattered.
Yeah.
And, you wanted to do the work because you wanted to try hard. And there was a lot of laughter and goofing off and things that you, especially in the early 2000s, you weren't seeing in classrooms that were, quiet, and you're supposed to be sitting there and paying attention and digesting. And I would imagine as well, the other one that I mentioned, now she's Mrs. Williams, but she was a computer teacher that I had. She is still one of my close personal friends today. Her husband baptized my kids and my husband. Like there's a lot of
A
connections
lot of
there.
connection points. Yeah.
Her husband knew my dad, like through their work and everything. But we connected because of September 11th. When, growing up in Jersey, we weren't
Yeah.
terribly far. And when that happened, there was a core group of us that just wanted to do something. And we got the names of all of the first responders who had passed away. And we did a card drive. So we got just a ton of blank sympathy cards, and kids could come up at lunch, pick a name out, and write a letter to the family. And we went up and delivered them ourselves,
Oh wow.
which was like a crazy experience to begin with. I got to see ground zero. I was like 2 months away from being 18 at the time, or else I could have like gone in, but I
Yeah.
wasn't an adult, so I
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to. But that was all a very overwhelming experience. But then we started getting letters back from the families, hearing about the specific stories of what happened to their loved one, where they were, what they were doing. And that is something that I will never be able to recreate with anything that's ever happened to me. But I mean, we became a very core group just because of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And she sort of led that effort as far as
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yep.
that's fantastic. Well,
Mhm.
you said something about your first teacher that really I think I don't want to let it pass, which is when you put that attention and that focus on another person, it makes a huge difference, right? It's kind of what we talk about with the ripple concept. What that's a great nugget that you just dropped right there, which is phenomenal. But if you were asked, well, you are. I'm going to ask you right now. What is the best piece of advice you could give to a teacher that, or someone that's thinking about getting into education in the classroom, or maybe is in the classroom and they're like, is this really what I need to be doing? What's the best piece of advice you would give them right now?
The best piece of advice is one that I was given in my first year teaching. And it was that it is your job, it's not your life.
Hmm.
So you can be as passionate about it as the day is long, but you need to be able to separate yourself from it, or else you're not going to make it. Because you bring home so much trauma just from what you find out the kids are dealing with at home, different aspects of just the workload, and wanting to make sure they get good test scores, and could you have done something better, and all of those pieces that just weigh on a teacher normally. And now again, we have all those other pieces that come into it. So it's like you need to be able to separate that. And at the same time, when you are in the trenches, when you are doing it, don't take yourself so seriously. It's okay to laugh with the kids. Anybody who is still saying in 2023, don't smile until Christmas is wrong. Like that is not, that's,
Who says that?
can I tell you how many people are like, oh no, you have to be firm and you need to, like, you don't smile for the first several months and it's like, that's not gonna work with these kids anymore. Like that's just, they are gonna make your life miserable.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They'll make you not smile for sure at that point.
Right, right. And then you won't smile again.
Yeah.
So, it's the best profession, in my opinion, for having your cup full. But
Yeah.
if you don't, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, you need to make sure that you have ways to keep that cup full, because it's
Yeah.
also really, really easy for it to be dumped out and not refilled.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's really great advice for sure. Well, last two questions. What does the ripple effect mean to you when you hear that term?
It's being able to start small and then having the biggest impact, because it's like a snowball. It starts with just I always say it's your snowflake that turns into your avalanche.
Yeah.
It's just doing the one thing that makes a difference to one kid. Or I always say that buying into the student-centered model is like the stages of grief. At first they're like, this is great. And then they're like, oh, this is so much work. And then all of a sudden you see like one kid buys in and the next kid buys in and it's a tipping point all of a sudden where you realize you've got them all. Yeah. Minus those few outliers, but that again could be another conversation for another day. But
we
for the
like
most
3 or 4 follow-up episodes.
Right?
I'm excited. This is a whole series.
Just help you out, right? But yeah, so it's really just not trying to get to that end point first, but realize that it is a process and there are layers and there's going to be times where you have setbacks and you got to kind of like regroup. Kind of like the whole concept of what my new book is going to be about is being able to regroup and find that center again.
Well, my last question, and that was a great answer, by the way. I love that. My last question would be, what ripple can I create for you?
My gosh, that's a very loaded question. I mean, I would love more people to know what it is that I do. I would love to, have those conversations with sub administrators who are willing to have the conversations with their teachers, not just somebody who's trying to find something to implement, but wants to do that whole package of making sure everyone's on the same page, understands why it's relevant, and then move on from there. Like those type of pieces. Because again, it's all fluid, it's all layers, and it's got to all connect and work together.
Well, my ask of our audience, right, whether you're listening to this on the podcast platforms or you're catching this on YouTube, is every single one of us lives somewhere where there's a school and a school district. And for us to create a positive ripple for Jenn and her work, one of the ways that you can do that is say, hey, here's something I want to share. Here's somebody that I think is making a huge difference, because even though you're based now in North Carolina as opposed to Jersey, right? You have ripple will travel, I assume. You'll go anywhere that you're needed.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's help Jenn and her mission and what she's doing. Her organization is Student Centered World. Jenn, what's the best way for people to follow you so that they stay up to date on when the book releases? And if you're on social, if there's any specific channels you want them to follow you on, this would be an opportunity to do that. We'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So my website itself is studentcenteredworld.com. If you click on the top corner, there's a spot that says work with us, learn with us, something along those types, but it's got all the different,
whatever,
something with us, right? It's all the different workshops and stuff that I do. Some of them are paid. A lot of them are free. So a bunch of different things there. I am on all of the socials. I probably could be a little bit more consistent with the socials, but I'm on all of them. So it makes it a little bit harder. But I'm at Student Centered World on everything except for Twitter, because it was too many characters. So on Twitter, X, whatever, it's at StuCent World, STUCENT.
All right.
Just made it smaller.
We'll get that link. Be sure to check out this the show notes. And if you happen to be on a podcast platform just hearing this, reach out to me at Ripple On. I'll get you hooked up. Or you just find Jenn, because I'm following her on Twitter or X, or like we said,
whatever it is
today. Because by the time this airs, I mean, it might change. Who
It
knows?
could.
Elon could get a wild hair. It's crazy.
Who
But
knows?
Jenn, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Ripple Effect podcast. You are doing amazing work. I want to do whatever I can to support you. And we've already committed to like 4 or 5 additional episodes.
Right.
So we've got
I'll be
content for
back.
days, right? So, but I'm so grateful that you took the time to do this. I want to say, the work that you're doing, it is absolutely creating a positive ripple out there for, the teachers that you get an opportunity to work with, the inspiration that they take in order to inspire their colleagues, but ultimately the students. And really that's what it's about, right? As I always tell anybody in the education space, the number one mission is the kids, and you are truly inspiring that change. So I just want to say I'm super grateful to know you. I'm very in awe of what you're doing and want to help, wherever I can to create as many positive ripples as I can for you.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. It's always good to hear that, it's working.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, guys, we'll be back again with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. But until then, Jenn, ripple on.
Thanks.